Good afternoon. It's Friday the 20th of October in the afternoon, and I'm going to read chapter 2 from my novella, Bomber. Chapter 2, entitled Tail End Charlie. Chris Collins was seldom absent from Mike's mind. He was a capable and cheerful ground crew member, always had a quick fix for any mechanical hiccup their beloved Lancaster encountered. Now, as he squeezed through the tiny door into the fuselage of the massive bomber, parachute clutched in his free hand, the oxygen and comms mask unclipped and hanging down on the leather flying helmet, making him look like he had another mouth open on his round face, Mike thought about Ginge, just laying sleeping on his bunk. He thought of the angle of his body, the peaceful repose of his head, and the shock of tousled hair, reminding him of a crush he had once had on a senior prefect at public school. Mike felt a pang of nostalgia as he recalled those fluttery feelings he'd experienced during his youth at boarding school. It was all unspoken, more a matter of looking rather than doing, and admiration of physical strength combined with athletic prowess. All very David and Jonathan, he thought, recalling the often read story during Sunday worship in the old school chapel, where he took into himself the body and blood of Christ, well, symbolically at least, because he was not a Catholic or a left-footer, as his military father used to call those who batted for the other team. But now he saw Ginger's face, and again thought of those slender fingers working on that Merlin engine in the night. He suddenly wished he could entwine his fingers in those grease-covered fingers once again. One more touch would be good, powerful, strengthening, like David putting on Saul's armour before going to fight the gigantic Philistine, but this time not with a slingshot, but with a pair of jet-black, air-cooled, death-spitting machine guns, ejaculating bloody carnage from his own hands, shredding metal, flesh, brain and bone, to keep his crew, his friends, alive just a little bit longer. Greater love hath no man than a man lay down his life for his friends, he thought, finally popping through the thin aluminium door behind the massive wing spar and then treading his way towards the light from his tail gunner position, filtering through from the arc lights on the disposal apron. Everything was tight inside what was essentially an aluminium tube formed with cross-sectional hoops and formers. Even the parachute he carried could not be worn while he was behind the two Browning machine guns. Firstly, there wasn't enough space for him to wear a parachute. Secondly, it would impair his freedom of movement and access to the guns, their loading mechanisms with various electrical and mechanical systems to operate, aim and traverse them in all positions, both horizontal or vertical. But this was a risk he had to take. The space was packed with his crew oxygen equipment, the electrics for his heated flight suit, his relief tube if he needed to urinate, and his link to the crew intercom system. So the parachute was stowed on the bulkhead, RAF speak for a paper-thin, non-armoured partition wall that would have to rotate. It would have to rotate to reach the turret, and then re-enter and bail out. Almost as an afterthought, a crash axe was stowed just below the parachute, likely to chop himself out through the skin of the camouflaged fuselage. As he entered, the blistered part perspex, part glazed double dustbin turret constructed at the end was also visible in the metal formers that were integral to the fuselage. Mike saw the massive horizontal tail fins standing proud on either side of his position. He knew the same parachute could be torn to shreds by enemy gunfire or burned away in an internal fire, for which there was also provided a tiny hand-pumped fire extinguisher. He'd soon be strapped in, and everything would be ready for takeoff. He sat, or rather mounted, something akin to a bicycle seat. Like the saddle on a motorbike, it had 2 coil springs on the back and narrowed sharply to a point that would fit neatly under that which the crew called the family jewels. Cocking his leg over while moving his firm buttocks backwards as he assumed the position. As he stared out through the letterbox-like flap from which the original perspex had now been removed to better enable his view of the night, eliminating annoying reflections, he thought of the crew joking with the son of an Anglican parson, who also acted as tailgaller in B for Bertie. They teased the lad about his father being a cleric and asked about his rank in the church hierarchy. That's the hesitating, pimply youth would reply. Well, if you must know, he's a canon. Almost as one, they'd quit back. Well, with you having the guts to sit there, you must have at least inherited balls like a cannon yourself. The pimply, post-pubescent youth would flash red-faced, but secretly you could see he loved this acknowledgement from his comrades. Buckling on his lap strap, Mike remembered how he had heard him screaming over the radio of his Lank when it went down like a flaming red Roman candle over Berlin. They'd been caught in at least 5 searchlights when they flew straight in to the fragmented burst of an 88mm flak shell. Mike could not be sure, but he thought he heard the lad shouting the words of the Lord's Prayer as the whole tail assembly parted from the main fuselage. They'd all looked, but there were no parachutes. Now at his action station, and the pilot in the meantime had established internal electrical power with at least one of those 4 mighty Merlins run up to idle, he thought of Ginge again, and his heart seemed to ache this time. Almost watching his gloved hands flick the switch and wind lever for a better height on his perch behind the drilled gunmetal barrels that pointed like fingers towards the now dark apron, Mike began, for a moment, to wonder if he and Ginge could finally be one. Live as one, love as one, even feel the intimacy of each other's bodies when they were fighting to save a world that had laws against the love that dare not speak its name. Even in Civvy Street, you could go to prison for being intimate with another man.